Alright, Shalom Hebrews. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Okay, Hebrews, I want to show that, we Israelites didn't have no problem with going into Africa, and how close Egypt was to the promised land, and how that, Egypt was a big nation, and, they had plenty of resources. And I showed that, during times of trouble, or when the Hebrews thought, trouble was upon them, how sometime we'll find ourselves in Egypt. Now, some of our first forefathers, before we even got the covenant, was in Egypt. Before we got the covenant, Prophet Abraham was in Egypt. Prophet Joseph was in Egypt. Our father prophet Israel was in Egypt. And then after we had got the covenant, and we was told to leave them Egyptians alone and leave their culture alone. You have the prophet Isaiah, you have the prophet Jeremiah, and then you have this prophet Urijah. He will be chased into Africa. He would flee and go into Africa thinking, refuge, trying to get away from Jehoiakim. And Jehoiakim was a son of King Josiah. And King Josiah gonna be the king, the prophecy king, that go all the way back to Jeroboam days, when Jeroboam was chased into Egypt, into Africa. And we know that the tribe of Ephraim are were mixed with Hebrews and Hamites. They was a combination of a Hebrew and a Hamite tribes, mixed, because Joseph was given Asenath. Asenath was the priest of own daughter. They was Hamites. So, that's a Hamite in a Shemite mixture with the tribe of Ephraim and Manasseh. And you see that the tribe of Ephraim basically ran the northern kingdom, and it was the tribe of Ephraim affiliation with the Egyptians that caused us to lose covenant, because it was Jeroboam that brung that Patah Ra religion out of Egypt. The Queen of Heaven, and that Is Horus religion, and put that on the northern kingdom, and that will cause us to go into Africa to hide, and we will be enslaved from there. But I'm gonna show that how some of the prophets, it wasn't no big thing to go into Africa, and how that during our times of trouble, how we Hebrews will find ourselves in Africa. And that's what happened to the Israelites during the last days. I got a video showing how it's the quietest history on the face of this earth. And if you was to type in Hebrew Israelites fleeing into Africa during the Babylonian wars, you ain't gonna get nothing but what the Israelite Brotherhood show. Okay, Hebrews, let's jump into this. We know that our father Abraham went into Egypt. Egypt is Africa. And then that's another thing I'm gonna discuss, is how that Egypt borders the borders that we have today of Africa, are not the borders in in the ancient days, before the Europeans carved the whole African continent up. The League of Nations, when them Europeans done whooped everybody, they decided on searching the whole Africa out to see if there was any Hebrews left. And all them nations got together, and they, this is around about 1800 something. We know that they stopped bringing the slaves, to this country around about 1865. They supposed to have abolished slavery in 1868 or something like that. But they kept the trade going. Well, them Europeans got together, And you know, they try to tell you that it was a little war thing, but really what they was doing was searching the whole continent of Africa out for any Hebrews, if it was any left. And then they got, you know, they throw them borders up. But the Egyptian borders that you have today in Libya and all these other nations are not the borders in the past. You know, Egypt didn't, you know, Africa didn't have no borders. You know, it was a borderless nation until the Europeans came and, you know, divided the whole continent up. Well, how about that you got pyramids that they never speak about, that they never talk about in southern Libya? You know, all this is the Sahara. You know, all this is the Sahara, and this is where we Hebrews would run to during the Babylonian wars, breaking covenant. But in Lower Libya, they got pyramids, and they don't never talk about these pyramids. And I'm gonna tell you the reason that they don't talk about them pyramids is because we Hebrews were connected to those pyramids. You know how our people say, "Oh, we build the pyramids. We build the pyramids in Africa." That must have been lodged in our memories, because sure enough, we did build some pyramids in Lower Libya. And, you know, all the pyramids that were built are on the west side of the Nile. And that's, you know, it's kind of like, you know, the going into the interior of Africa. But let's look here and see. Man, let's look here and see. Alright. Pyramids in Lower Libya. Alright, these are some of the pyramids they don't want to never talk about. They don't want to never talk about these pyramids, because these pyramids will connect you to us, you know. And then they got graves and stuff with people that share the same DNA that the people from the transatlantic slave trade share. And then I showed that, you know, our first derogatory name was Gramentian, and that how the Gramentian Empire pop up around the time of the Babylonian wars, and how did these peoples come into Africa and build a civilization and had the same technology that the Hebrews had, as far as building houses, a standing army. And we know that if you have an army, that, you know, man, it comes from having a administration and government, and, you know, a civilization and so forth with technology. And how that these army and these peoples pop up in the Sahara in Lower Libya. And what a coincidence, because the people that the tribe of Ephraim is connected to, the Mishwish tribes, are from Libya. The Shawshank and Sheshank, three of them individuals are spoken of in the Bible, and one of their kings are gonna be the king that Jeroboam fled into Egypt to kick it with during Solomon's reign, when Solomon was after him, and when Solomon didn't go into Africa to try to capture Jeroboam, because Jeroboam had fled to his family member Shawshank and them gonna be the Mishwish tribes. Those gonna be the Libyans, the Libyan Hamites that we were connected to. And matter of fact, those were the Hamites that was on control, that was in control when Prophet Joseph, you know, was in Egypt, and then the Pharaoh wasn't real mean to him and kind of showed him some love and so forth. That's gonna be the Libyan pharaohs. And then they control what you call Lower Egypt, and Upper Egypt was controlled by the Nubian Ethiopian stock. You know, Upper Egypt is gonna be, you know, in by the Sudan and going down to these parts, and Lower Egypt is going to be at the top part and so forth. And that's the part that the Libyan Hamites controlled and so forth. And that's going to be Lubium in the book of genealogies, with Ham's descendants, you know, coming from, you know, Ham. Okay. let's look at some of these pyramids that they don't talk about that, you know, were built. And then I'm going to show how the prophets ran into Africa and how we had a standing relationship. You know, all these are pyramids in southern Libya, and these going to be the pyramids that we built, you know, when we sojourned in Africa. And like I say, our first derogatory name, and they try to credit all the history of Africa in the interior to the Berber tribes, and the Berbers are there now, and the Berbers ain't never built no pyramids because they can't build them now, and they ain't never been in captivity, and they ain't never been oppressed, but they try to attribute all the history in Africa to the Berber peoples. And because the Berber peoples are connected to the Sea peoples and to the peoples that were Israelites' enemies, like the Edomites and the Amorites and so forth, that come off into Africa and mix with them Hamites, and that'd be the Berbers. And they try to cover up all the Israelites' accomplishments in Africa by the Berbers, because the Berbers roots, the you know, they foundation, you know, their roots is connected to the Edomites, and how the Edomites and so forth had a connection to us through our father Isaac, and how Jacob was a brother to the Edomite tribes before they went off and made it with the Hittites and the Amorites and all the other tribes that we Israelites were against and were told not to mix with, because they had the Nephilim stock in them and Cain stock. And Cain is going to be them individuals that's mentioned after Genesis that pop up, like the Horites and the Hittites and so forth. Okay, let's look at Prophet Abraham going into Africa, and then I'm going to get back to discussing the Gramentian thing, how that's the Greeks call those people in the Sahara Gramentians, and that's the first derogatory name that the Hebrews would be given. And I prove in through other videos how that they were Hebrew Israelites fleeing from the promised land into Africa, breaking covenant. Okay, Prophet Abraham, you know, went into Egypt during the time of famine. And you go to Genesis 12, chapter 12, and then this will tell you how the prophet Abraham was given the blessings by the Creator, and then how he was told to go to Canaan, because the Creator was going to give him that land. And this is going to be when the Amorites broke their covenant, the chief of the Canaanite tribes, how the Amorites broke their covenant and became wicked, and how we Israelites were supposed to uproot them and replace them. And as a matter of fact, because how we didn't destroy the Canaanite culture back then, and that same wickedness rule the world today, and how the earth would be a paradise if we would have destroyed that Canaanite culture, and how we Hebrew Israelites have to wake up now today in order to reverse the evil and wickedness that's taking over the earth. You know, it's up to us Israelites to wake up and, you know, to reverse that. And I might talk about some of that later on too. But here's Prophet Abraham sojourned in Egypt. In Africa, like I say, you know, Africa is the Sahara, and Egypt is part of the Sahara. I have to show that real quick. Now, Egypt is part of the Sahara. Egypt is the Sahara. Look. Egypt is the Sahara. So when we ran into Egypt, we ran into the Sahara, and they got all kind of oases and so forth in the Sahara. All this is the Sahara. This is where we would run to and hide. In days they try to call us sub-Saharan, but we wasn't below, you know what I'm saying, sub-Saharan, no rainforest. We was right on the edge of the rainforest in the desert, and we could hop between both. If the enemy came into the desert, we can get into the forest. If them Chad, Hamite, Angola, Congo groups started trouble with us, we can get into the desert. And that's how we played it till them Edomites came and started pointing us out. And then Ashkenazi and the rest of them came and then enslaved us. You know, they say that the word nigger come from that word Niger. You know, they try to say that the word nigger come from the word Niger, but those are the parts where we was at, you know, below Libya. We had been pushed a little farther down, and then we would start having conflict with the Chad and the Nigerian and the Congo groups when our water supply dried up on us in the Sahara, and then that what caused the transatlantic slave trade. See, they try to tell us, see, this also explain why them Africans ain't crying out for us after all this time. See, history is not wrote up right, and they not gonna never tell us the truth and how we developed that black and white ideology from being here in captivity, and how in the biblical days it was black folks doing us wrong as well as the non-pigmented peoples, and how that color, you know, don't mean nothing and stuff, and how, you know, we been tricked by that, and how it's been Hamites and all kind of folks doing us wrong and do us wrong now today and don't have no respect for us. Right now today, the Hamites and the folks from Africa ain't got no respect for us. And then you got so-called transatlantic descendants go back over there and try to embrace them folks and be close to them folks, and them folks just mediocrely accept you long as you bring your money, to visit them and so forth. Okay, let's get back into this here. Alright. Chapter 12 of Genesis. This is Prophet Abraham coming from the Mesopotamia area. And that's another thing. You know, Prophet Abraham and them was in Chaldea, Ur of the Chaldees, and that was the nativity. Like I say, we always hung around some Hamites, and how Chaldea was founded by the Assyrians, and the Assyrians, Usher was a son of Nimrod. This is way before Prophet Abraham was born. Let's look at that real quick. Alright, you go to, that's going to be in Prophet Isaiah. He tell you everything. Let's see if we can find that. One of these verses where the Assyrians, a lot of people be, you know, they'll say, well, the Chaldeans, Abraham come from the Chaldeans, the nation of the Chaldeans, trying to give you the impression that the Chaldeans were originally, you know, non-pigmented peoples. But what had happened is that Chaldea got took over by the Scythians. You know, the Scythians, Ashkenazi took Chaldea over, and then, you know, that would be like a district of the Babylonian Empire, because the Ashkenazi come out the Caucasus Mountain and, you know, got into Chaldea first, and then they will be kicking it into, you know, kicking it in Assyria too. I got videos explaining how Ashkenazi was in Assyria kicking it, and then that what caused the Assyrian Empire to be destroyed, and how before that Prophet Jonah went there. You know, that was the reason why Prophet Jonah went to Assyria to try to tell them to stop kicking it with them, to try to tell the Assyrians to stop kicking it with Ashkenazi, the Scythians in them, and how that they didn't listen, and then how that they was eventually destroyed by Ashkenazi. Well, Ashkenazi took over Chaldea too. Alright, look this. Alright, this would be Isaiah chapter 23, verse 13. Behold, the land of the Chaldeans. This people was not till the Assyrians found it for them that dwell in the wilderness. They set up the towers thereof, they raised up the palace thereof, and he brought it to ruins, So the Assyrians founded the Chaldeans, and gave it, its nations. And then I had another verse. This would be Nahum. Nahum 3. I'm going to just look and see what that say. Nahum chapter 3. And then when they try to tell you Hebrews that minor prophets, when they give them prophets in the back, calling them minor prophets, and how that them folks is crazy, and that it never's no minor prophets, and how all those prophets were important, and was there for a reason and stuff, and there's never no minor prophets. Alright, this will be 3:8. Alright, this is talking about Nineveh. Alright, this is talking about Nineveh. Art thou better than populous? Know that situated on the rivers, that the waters round about it, whose rampart was the sea, and her wall was from the sea. Ethiopia and Egypt were her strength, and it was infinite. Put and Lubium, that's gonna be them Lubians, were thy helpers. Alright, and Nahum tell you the destruction of Assyria before it happened, and how Assyria, it's like it's a myth that's been going around since we Israelites broke the covenant, of how the Assyrians took 10 tribes away. And I showed that that's false in history, and I showed that they came and kidnapped the 3 fighting tribes to help them fight the to fight the Scythians that was trying to take over Assyria and so forth. I got all that mapped out and all the videos. Okay, let's get back to this prophets and going into Africa and how it was no thing. And then I'm going to show in our last days how we Israelites will run into Africa and never return, and how that would, start the fulfilling of the curses of how the Hebrews would be enslaved and took into all the nations, for bondage and so forth. Okay, we go to Genesis 12. Genesis 12, and then we'll see that it was a famine in the land of Canaan, and that the prophet Abraham had been came down from the Mesopotamian area, over here, came from over here, and went on over here, which Canaan, the promised land is northeast Africa. It's on the African plateau, and when Africa moved, the promised land moved, because it's connected to it, and then it break off, and then other parts are connected to Asia and so forth. But how that the promised land is on the Africa plateau, and how it's connected to Africa. And it's strange how the Ethiopian and so forth break off and ain't part of the African plateau and so forth. Okay, Genesis 12, and we get to verse 9. And Abraham journeyed, going on still toward the south, and there was famine in the land. And Abraham went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it come to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarah his wife, Behold, now I know that thou art, they try to be slick with that word, but saying that she was beautiful and a woman to look upon. Back in the days, if your woman was real fine, and you was out, man, they'll kill the man and take the woman. Back in the days, they'll come kill the man and take the woman, so you had to be able to hold it down. Because, man, if your woman fine, they finna come kill you, man, and take your woman. And then that's how they did it back in the days. So a woman really needed a man back then, as well as now, in this Babylonian society that we got set up, that they got set up. They kind of changed the things, how did they function. But back in the days, a man had to be a man. All right. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they shall kill me, but they will save thee alive. Yeah, they gonna take her. I pray thee, thou art my sister. Say, I pray thee that thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. All right, and it come to pass that when Abraham come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, that she was beautiful, fair. She was beautiful. And the princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commanded her before Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. He done snatched up, and he entreated Abraham well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen and asses and men servants and maid servants and asses and camels. Pharaoh done hooked him up. And the Elohim plagued Pharaoh in his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. And Pharaoh called Abraham and said, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why saidst thou, She is my sister, so I might have taken her to me to wife? Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his man concerning him, and they sent him away and his wife and all that he had. They kicked him up out of Egypt. Man, get up out of here. You don't worship our God anyway. Abraham ain't gonna worship the Egyptian gods. You see what I'm saying? And then the real creator stepped to Pharaoh and let it be known. So Pharaoh gonna kick Prophet Abraham up out of Egypt and probably say, Don't you ever come back here again. All right. And Abraham went out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had. Everything about him had to get up out of there, because, he ain't going to worship the Egyptian God. And Lot with him into the south. And we know what's south of Egypt. It's going to be these parts. So he going to go down here and get some gold and stuff, and then head on back to the promised land. Get some gold and some camels and stuff. And Abraham was very rich in cattle and in silver and gold. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and her. So he done left Egypt, and then he gonna get the Egyptian woman, and then have a son, you know, by Hagar, Ishmael, and this is where the Creator gave us the Canaanites land. All right. If you go to Genesis 15:18, in the same day that the Elohim made a covenant with Abraham, saying, Unto thy seed will I give this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. So he gave us this whole inheritance right here from the river. See, this would be another river, another reason why we will go into Egypt, because if you look at the river right here, man, the Nile, man, it's kind of like in them areas where we would be running to, during the Babylonian wars, before we would go deeper into Africa, because it's a known fact that the Babylonians came in and took Egypt over, and how they had control of Egypt and the Promised Land in the Mesopotamian area for 50 years, from 588 BC to 538 BC, to the Persians came in and whooped them. And then, we will be going on deeper into Africa, to these parts where Ephraim descendants were from. And we will stay there for almost 1,000 years till the water system start drying up on us. And then we will have conflict with these groups right here. All these folks right here. And then they will march us and sell us off into the bondage that we in today. Okay, so we ain't have no problems with going into Africa, as I showed that Prophet Abraham was in Africa. So now let's show and see about the Prophet Joseph, how the Prophet Joseph, was in Africa. We know that the Prophet Isaac, he was told not to go down to Egypt. He didn't even have to go into Egypt and so forth when troubles, because the Creator was with him, and we will start now mission of getting ready to be in a position to take the land over Canaan. All right. So then Isaac was born, and then we get to how Joseph was in Egypt. All right, that's gonna start around about. That's gonna start around about Genesis 37, and we know that how Joseph had this little problems with his brothers, which gonna really be the first Israelite on Israelite uh, fighting and killing and us being against each other. You know, Israelite on Israelite violence and so forth. Gonna start with Joseph's brothers selling him to them Ishmaelites who were selling Joseph into Egypt, which was all by the will of the Creator, and that the Creator, you know, set all that in motion. But you know that this will be, you know, our first recorded acts of the, you know, Israelite on Israelite violence will be when Joseph's brothers, you know, sold him and did that to him. But how that it would have a good ending and how he would, you know, eventually save the Israelite nation, and then how Joseph was, you know, in Egypt. And we know that he was in Egypt. You know, the Ishmaelites sold him. And then, you know, one of the Egyptians bought him, Potipari, all right? And this is Genesis 39. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potipari, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down hither. And the Elohim was with Joseph, and he was prosperous, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptians. And the master saw that the Elohim was with him, and that the Elohim made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph ain't gonna be worshiping no Egyptian god. He ain't gonna be worshiping them Egyptian gods, because he couldn't have prospered worshiping the Egyptian gods, so that the Egyptians seen to him worshiping Almighty Yah, and that, you know, he was wise enough to recognize that Joseph was blessed by the real Creator. All right. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it come to pass from that time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Elohim blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. See, the Egyptian wouldn't have got no blessing from the Creator if it wasn't for Joseph's sake, just because it was a Hebrew Israelite there that worshiped the Creator. Then that's why that Egyptian got blessed, because it was an Israelite worshiping the Creator in his house, and he allowed that to happen. So yeah, he gonna get blessed. All right. And let me see. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had except the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a goodly person and was well favored. And it come to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon him, and upon Joseph, and said, lie with me, you know, and he gonna refuse that, because he it is this man and put him in charge of everything and bought him out of bondage, and you know, and then got him hooked up, and now his wife trying to sleep with him, and how that'd be sure enough low down if he went and, you know, did something like that, and how worshiping the Creator, that you ain't gonna do that, that you gonna know that that's wrong. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master want not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he had to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither had he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against Yah? You know, he ain't gonna do that. And it come to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. See, we Hebrew Israelites do have a strong trait in that we can resist evil, and especially sexual evil and so forth. We can resist that. You know, we got the willpower to resist it. That's already in us. But you know, it's a known fact that we was known as Hebrews, and that we was a different ethnic group, tribal group than the Egyptians, as expressed throughout, you know, Genesis. As you know, they refer to us as Hebrews also. This is Genesis 39:14. Then she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them, saying, See, he had brought in Hebrew unto us to mock us. You know, us Hebrews were like some country folks. Some country folks, and the Egyptians were the city slickers. Alright. That she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them, saying, See, he had brought in Hebrew unto us to mock us. He come in to me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. You know, and she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought in unto us come in unto me to mock me. See, we was looked upon as different, just like, you know, now we are, you know, ethnic different from these folks by the derogatory names that they call us to set us aside from the other black folks that we call Negroes, blacks, and all of those stuff. Alright, so we see how the prophet Joseph was down in Egypt, and how it was no problem, you know, going to Egypt. And then we can show that Joseph, you know, after he done did all this stuff for the Egyptians and saved them, and how that he was given one of the Egyptians priest daughters, and now this is one of the head priests over the whole Egyptian religion system. Now Pharaoh being slick, and them Egyptians knew that they had to do trade on the other side of the promised land, and here it is, some Hebrews that got a connection to a creator, and has one right up in their house, you know, in their nest. So Pharaoh gonna be slick, and he gonna give Joseph, cause Pharaoh gonna be thinking long terms. You know, them pharaohs knew that Abraham didn't worship they gods, and Joseph, now he in Egypt, and he ain't worshiping them gods, the Egyptians gods. So Pharaoh gonna know that, hey man, there's some Hebrews in Canaan and so forth, and they don't worship the gods that we worship. And here is an opportunity to do some dirty stuff to him. So then he gonna give Joseph Asenath. Asenath is the priest of own daughter, probably hoping to change Joseph some kind of way. But Joseph, you know, stayed strong the whole time. But he would have two sons by her, Manasseh and Ephraim. And I could show that the tribe of Ephraim, man, did Egyptian stuff, and that tribe messed us up the whole time. And that what caused us to go into Africa during the Babylonian wars. Alright, when you go to Genesis 41:45, and Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zephaniah-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went all over the land of Egypt. Now, like I said, the Egyptian borders ain't what they is today. Joseph could have went all over here, because, you know, the Egyptian borders, you know, are not what they are, man, today. Alright. So Joseph had two sons by that African woman, which would show that, you know, them Hamites mixed in with us too. And then I'm gonna show that it was a Hamite that, you know, we had to count a lineage through a Hamite, that they was classified as Israelites, his descendants from this brother named Sheshan that had daughters and didn't have no sons, and how he let this Hamite have his daughter, and they would have sons, and them sons will be counted as Israelites. Alright. And Joseph was born, and unto Joseph was born two sons before the year of the famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore unto him. And Joseph called the name of the first Manasseh, for he had made me to forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for Yah had caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. All right, now those Egyptians, those Egyptians would lead with us. You know, those Egyptians would lead with us, and doing Exodus, and I'm gonna show that. All right, if you go to Genesis, no man, it's gonna be Exodus 12:38. Now this us exiting Egypt. Now we know that another Pharaoh came on that didn't know the works of Joseph, and that's gonna be the Egyptians from Upper Egypt, the Nubian stock. You know, Lower Egypt would take over Upper Egypt, and Upper Egypt would take over Lower Egypt. Well, it was during this time when Upper Egypt took over Lower Egypt, and that they didn't recognize the works that Joseph had did through the works of the Creator, and they took us into bondage, and we started making bricks for them, probably to build a society up like we had built the Egyptian society up from the working and so forth, being there when some Hebrews, you know, come in town. You know, we're going to, you know, do some stuff. We're going to make some stuff happening like Joseph did with, you know, constructing them, probably them treasure cities to hold in them grains and so forth, and that food, because it's going to take a whole lot of food and some rebuilding to store the stuff that Joseph, you know, had to save Egypt during them 7 years of famine. So them Egyptians probably gonna want, in Lower Egypt gonna want their stuff built up too. All right, well, when they come on, the Upper Egyptians took over the Lower Egypt. That them the ones from Lower Egypt, the Libyan mixture that Ephraim them was kin to, would Exodus with us, and that'll be Exodus 12:38. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, flocks and herds, and very much cattle. So them Egyptians would lead with us. And then I'm finna show this how an Egyptian was counted. His lineage was counted as an Israelite. If you go to, this would be First Chronicles. First Chronicles, let's see. Let's get to First Chronicles. So we Israelites ain't really have no problem with going into Africa. And when we went into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, breaking covenant, that's was our natural spot. And that was a natural place for us to go, was Africa. And it's crazy how they have all this history in the world about the Israelites going to all these other nations when it's only one nation and one place that the Israelites are recording as going to during the time of trouble or anything, is going into Africa and so forth. And that the majority of the times when the Hebrews fled and went somewhere, that it was always into Africa. Okay, if you go to First Chronicles chapter 2. And this is from the these people gonna be from the tribe of Judah. You know, the tribe of Judah gonna have a African Hamite lineage. And you know, as you read, you know, a minute to tell you about the sons of Judah, and how he had got them from that old Canaanite woman and stuff. They probably gonna have a little mixed look. But as you get over to Second Chronicles, First Chronicles, second chapter, verse 34, you'll see, now Sheshan had no sons but daughters, and Sheshan had a servant, an Egyptian, whose name was Jerah. And Sheshan gave his daughter to Jerah, his servant, to wife, and she bore him Atta, and Atta begot Nathan, and Nathan begot Zebed, and Zebed begot Ephion, and Ephion begot Obed, and Obed begot Jehu, and Jehu begot Azariah. See, as it go on, but that whole lineage from them on down gonna come off that Hamite that left with us, you know, doing Exodus and so forth, and how, you know, that they would be from the tribe that Ephraim them descended from, them Libyans and so forth. Okay, so we see how, them Africans hooked up with us, and we kicking it with them. And we see how the prophet Abraham was in Egypt in Africa. We see how the prophet Joseph was in Africa. And then let's go see how the prophet Israel was in Africa, went to Africa, and how that, he even blessed Pharaoh, the Pharaoh that Joseph and them would be kin to. That would be the same one that Ephraim descendant Jeroboam would run to in during Solomon time when he went to Shawshank, and he ran to his relative. Okay, and we go to Genesis 46. And Israel took his journey with all that he had and come to Beersheba and offered sacrifice. Beersheba gonna be one of the towns where the prophet Isaac, his father, had built that altar there, and offered sacrifice unto Yah of his father Isaac. And Yah spake unto Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob, and he said, here am I, and he said, I am Yah, the Yah of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will make there make of thee a great nation. I will go down with thee into Egypt, and I will also surely bring thee up again. And Joseph shall put his hands upon thine eyes. He hadn't seen his son in a long time, but the Creator told him that he was alive and they gonna see his son Joseph. So we know that, three prophets done been in Egypt. You got the prophet Abraham, you got the prophet Joseph, now you got the prophet Israel in Africa. Egypt is Africa, and Egypt is on the continent of Africa, and how you cannot separate. Look, you cannot separate Egypt from Africa. Impossible. But let the devils tell you that Egypt is the Middle East and it ain't part of the African continent. That's because they know that us Israelites ran into Africa during the Babylonian wars, and how the people, we abandoned our history to the Sephardi and the Ashkenazi Jews are in control of Western civilization history. So they don't want that to be known that the Hebrews had an affinity with Africa way before we broke the covenant, as I'm going to show. All right, as I'm showing. Okay, so we know that the prophet Israel went into Egypt, and look, check this out. He would even bless old Pharaoh, and look what he tell Pharaoh. All right, now Joseph was told to go get his daddy. All right, this is Genesis 47. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, my father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan. That's because it was a famine. Whenever it's a famine or trouble and so forth, we're going to go to Egypt, and then them Egyptians going to be looking at us as some country folks coming into the city. They're going to be some city slickers, with fabric and clothes and stuff. We're gonna have them robes and stuff on, and our beards gonna be long, our locks gonna be long, and them Egyptians, as you look at they images, they was shaving and so forth, and that's where that shaving come from, and why we shave here in this Egypt, because that's a custom, and how that that the Hebrews gonna come out of the fields and so forth with them locks and so forth. And that's why they will say this: they shall say, thy servants trade hath been cattle from our youth. This will be Genesis 46:34. This explaining why the Egyptians, held us in abomination, is because we was messing with them livestock, and they didn't have all the perfume smells and colognes that you have today to spray readily, easily and stuff. So you'll be smelling. That ye shall say, thy servants' trade hath been cattle from our youth, even unto now, both we and our fathers, and that we may dwell in the land of Gershon, for every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians. See, that's because they gonna be messing with them cattle and dealing with them folks up in the city and stuff, man. They ain't gonna be too cool with all the livestock and stuff hanging around the city and stuff. So we gonna be an abomination to them, and that's why we was given Gershon. Look, then Pharaoh came and let me see. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, my father, my brethren, and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Gershon. And he took some of his brethren, even 5 men, and presented them unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto his brethren, what is your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, thy servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers. They said moreover unto Pharaoh, for to sojourn in the land are we come, for thy servants have no pastures for their flocks, for famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Then therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh, and this is in Lower Egypt, so it wouldn't be no problem, cause we was cool with them. And Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell. And if thou knowest any man of the activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle. And Joseph brought in Jacob his father and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And you know what I'm saying? And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old art thou? And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of my years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and I have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. You know, that's like his great grandfather, Abraham's daddy gonna be done live 200 something years, 250 years when he got into Canaan. And then how Prophet Abraham lived about 175 or 80. So, you know, Prophet Israel was, I think, about 130 something, 40 or something. All right. So, but he told Pharaoh that he ain't do all the evil and wickedness, you know, doing his pilgrimage on this earth, and how Pharaoh couldn't say the same, but being that our father Israel blessed the Egyptian and so forth, and it's going to be the Egyptians from Lower Egypt. It's going to be a difference. And then that's why this was said, if you go to Isaiah, because we associated with them folks, and then Joseph now had 2 sons by the mixed Egyptian woman. So we're going to have a connection to them folks, and that's going to be one of the reasons why we're going to go into Africa in our last days. And then if you go to Isaiah 19, I turn right to it. All right. And then you go to Isaiah 19, and then you get to 23. In that day shall there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrians shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptians into Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even in blessings in the midst of the land, and whom the Elohim of hosts shall bless, saying, blessed be Egypt my people, in Assyria the work of my hand, in Israel mine inheritance. This was during the last days when we hooked up with the Assyrians to try to save them from being destroyed by them by Ashkenazi under the name Skinty. All right, so we know that prophet Isaiah was in Egypt too, but we see that how our father Israel blessed Pharaoh, and then it showed that we wasn't in bondage the 400 years also, because our bondage didn't come on into that new Pharaoh that didn't recognize Joseph works is going to be from Upper Egypt, the Nubian Ethiopian stock. Okay, now let's show Prophet Isaiah being in Egypt, and what a coincidence, I was already on the page. All right, if you go to Isaiah 20, and then as you read down to verse 3, you're going to see, and the Elohim said, like as my servant Isaiah had walked naked and barefoot 3 years for a sign and wonder upon Egypt and upon Ethiopia, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptian prisoners and the Ethiopian captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. You know, and that's what the Hebrews walking around with their pants hanging out, buttocks hanging out in this captivity in this Egypt. But how that the prophet Isaiah went to Egypt, and he was in Egypt. You know, so man, that's another prophet that was in Egypt. You know, we see that how prophet Abraham, Joseph, Israel, now prophet Isaiah was in Africa. Okay, now let's go look at prophet Jeremiah. He was in Africa also. If you go and he gonna chase us into Africa. He gonna chase us all the way into Africa. Prophet Jeremiah did. During our last days, when we said that we wasn't gonna follow the covenant and that we was going back into Africa to kick it with them very same Egyptians. You know, and then I can show in the book of Ezekiel, let me show that real quick, how we had an affinity with Egypt and how it was Egypt that had messed us up from the beginning. One of the reasons why we couldn't do the covenant is because we had an affinity with Egypt and didn't want to leave them folks alone to do the covenant. If you go to Ezekiel 23, Ezekiel 23, and it reads, the word of Elohim came again unto me, saying, Son of man, there were two women, the daughters of one mother, and they committed whoredoms in Egypt. They committed whoredoms in their youth. There were their breasts pressed, and there they bruised the tents of their virginity. And the name of them were Aholah, the daughter, and Abala, her sister, and they were man, and they bore sons and daughters. This were their names. Samaria is Aholah, and Jerusalem is Abala. Now, it's a known fact that the northern kingdom was on Egyptian religion, and then Judah would turn around and get on Egyptian religion in the last days when Necho, the Mishwish king from Lower Egypt, would kill King Josiah and put us back on Egyptian religion. And then this what the book of Jeremiah is about, and how we will go into Africa. But before then, all the tribes was driven into Judah for worshiping Egyptian religion, the northern kingdom. And we will get that mess put on us from Jeroboam. Let's go show this here. And he would, you know, be chased into Africa. And he was from the tribe of Ephraim. He would be chased into Africa by Solomon. All right, if you go to that's gonna be First Kings. Let's go to First Kings. First Kings chapter 11, verse 26, show you that Jeroboam was from the tribe of Ephraim, and Jeroboam the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite of Zerudah, Solomon's servant, whose mother name was Zurah, a widow woman, even he lifted up his hand against Solomon. That's because Solomon was doing all of those wicked stuff, having all them old women building temples and everything for him. Look, and Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt unto Shawshank. Shawshank gonna be that Libyan Mishwish stock that we was kin to from Joseph marrying Asenath and having them two sons, and how that the lower Egyptians controlled Libya, in southern Libya, when all they ruled went all the way into the interior of Africa. And that's one of the reasons why them devils be real quiet and they don't want this history known, because then you'll be able to trace the Hebrews into Africa, and they don't want that. They don't want to chase the Israelites into Africa because then them devils will lose their heritage real fast. But look, Solomon sought therefore to kill Jeroboam, and Jeroboam arose and fled into Egypt unto Shoshank, king of Egypt, and was in Egypt until the death of Solomon. That was his relative. That was his relative because as I showed that Ephraim and Manasseh and Ephraim was born from an Egyptian woman. And then how them Egyptians left with us. And then how some of the tribes had to use an Egyptian male when they didn't have a male inheritance, had to use the Egyptian servants to keep the lineage going, and how that they kids will be looked upon as Israelites. And that's why the Creator will say that the Egyptians were his people in the book of Isaiah. All right, so we see that Jeroboam fled into Egypt, but look what Jeroboam, he brought that them golden calves, and Shawshank would come out against Rehoboam, Solomon's son, and rob him and take everything away. Look, and it come to pass in the 5th year of Rehoboam that Shishak, this is Ephraim's kinfolks, king of Egypt, come up against Jerusalem, and he took away the treasures of the house of the Elohim and the treasures of the king's house. Even he took away all, and he took away all the shields of gold which Solomon had made. He was getting back at him for messing with his relative Ephraim. Okay, now look here. Now we're gonna see what Ephraim, what Jeroboam did. Okay, all right. Jeroboam gonna put that golden calf on us, and if you go to 1 Kings 12, and then you read on down and you get to verse 28. Wherefore the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. That's Ias, Horus, Ptah, Amun, Ra religion, all combined in the calf. The golden calf symbolized that. And wherefore the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. So that's Jeroboam putting the Egyptian religion on us. And then at the same time, how a prophet from Judah told Jeroboam that a king was going to be born named Josiah. This is 300 years before King Josiah was even born, and how he would get rid of the Jeroboam religion, which King Josiah did, cleaned up the Egyptian and the Amorite, Canaanite religion in the promised land, and we was free of that for 30 years. I got a video showing that how our end came under after the death of King Josiah, and then how we would, go into Africa because the Egyptians would kill him. Look, and behold, there came a man of Yah out of Judah by the word of the Elohim unto Bethel, and Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense, and he cried against the altar and the word of the Elohim, and said, O altar, altar, this saith the Elohim, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name, and upon thee shall he offer the priests of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. And then that came to pass. Okay, so now let's see. Let's get back on the prophets going into Africa. All right, so we see that that the prophet Jeremiah came all the way into Africa, but before then, man, I should have had the prophet Urijah before Jeremiah, but they was doing the same error, and how that Urijah should have been first and then Jeremiah, because it was doing Jeremiah's ring, and we hadn't all ran into Africa yet, and the Babylonians had came the first time, and that's what the book of Ezekiel about. They came in 595 BC, and then we fought them off, and then the Egyptians came out and helped us fight them Ashkenazi folks off, and then they came back a second time, and this would be the book of Jeremiah. But before they had got back into the land, it was this prophet that was telling Jehoiakim, this is going to be King Josiah's son that was hooked up with the Egyptians, that Prophet Yorjah said that, hey, man, that it's an end and that the kingdom finna come to an end and that everything was finna be over. And then how that they didn't want to hear that. Prophet Jeremiah had told them that from the beginning and was telling them. And then how that they didn't want to get Prophet Jeremiah, and then how that they was going to get Prophet Urijah, and how he took off into Africa, into Egypt, and then how that the Egyptians captured him and brung him back and sent him on back with the Hebrews that was sent into Africa to get him. So we had a long-standing relationship with Africa whenever we had bondage, or whenever we had trouble and it looked like we was finna go into bondage or any kind of troubles with war and things, we'll flee off into Africa. And if you go to Jeremiah 26, I'm gonna read it. In the beginning of the reign of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, came the word from the Elohim, saying, This saith the Elohim, stand ye in the court of the Elohim house, and speak unto all the cities of Judah, which come to worship in the Elohim house, all the words that I command thee to speak unto them, diminish not a word. If so be they will hearken and turn every man from his evil way, then I may repent of the evil which I propose to do unto them, because of the evil of their doings. And that was to send Ashkenazi in there, to let them folks come in there and chase us up off the land, knowing that once we got up off the land, we was going to go into captivity as outlined by all the curses. All right. And thou shalt say unto them, This saith the Elohim, if ye would not hearken unto me, to walk in my law, which I have set before you, to hearken unto the words of my servants the prophets, whom I set unto you, but rising up early and sending them, but ye have not hearkened, then I will make this house like Silo, and will make this city a curse to all the nations of the earth. And that's the way it is to now, how them heathens fighting and having war, and there ain't been no peace there since we left. All right. So the priests and the prophets and all the people heard Jeremiah speaking these words in the house of the Elohim. Now it come to pass when Jeremiah had made an end of speaking all that the Elohim had commanded him to speak unto the people, that the priests and the prophets and all the people took him, saying, Thou shalt surely die. Because we didn't want to hear that we was finna be kicked up off the land. We didn't want to hear that. And the promised land has been our only land and nation, and that all the other lands that once we ran up off it, we've been in voyage, and we in bondage now. All right. Now it come to pass when Jeremiah had made an end of speaking all that the Elohim had commanded him to speak, all of the people, that the priests and the prophets and all the people took him, saying, Thou shalt surely die. Why hast thou prophesied in the name of the Elohim, saying, This house shall surely be like Silo, and this city shall be desolate without an inhabitant? And all the people were gathered against Jeremiah in the house of the Elohim. He's saying, man, why you gonna say that ain't nobody gonna be in this land no more? We didn't want to hear that. All right. And when the princes of Judah heard these things, then they come up from the king's house unto the house of the Elohim, and sat down in the entry of the new gate of the Elohim's house. Then spake the priests and the prophets unto the princes and to all the people, saying, This man is worthy to die, for he had prophesied against this city, as ye have heard with your ears. Then spake Jeremiah unto all the princes and to all the people, saying, The Elohim sent me to prophesy against this house and against this city, all the words that ye have heard. Therefore now amend your ways and your doings, and obey the voice of the Elohim your Yah, and the Elohim will repent him of the evil that he had pronounced against you. As for me, behold, I am in your hand. Do with me as seemeth good and meet unto you. He was saying, hey man, Almighty Yah sent me to tell y'all this. Man, y'all can do to me as you want to. You know? But know for certain that if ye put me to death, ye shall surely bring innocent blood upon your own selves, and upon this city, and upon the inhabitants thereof. For of a truth the Elohim has sent me unto you to speak all these words in your ears. Then said the princes and all the people unto the priests and to the prophets, This man is not worthy to die, for he had spoken to us in the name of the Elohim our Yah. Then rose up certain of the elders of the land, and spake to all the assembly of the people, saying, Micah the Mosherite prophecy in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and spake to all the people of Judah, saying, Thus said the Elohim of hosts, Zion shall be plowed like a field, and Jerusalem shall become heaps in the mountains of the house at the high places of forest. Did Hezekiah king of Judah and all the people put him at all to death? Did he not fear the Elohim and besought the Elohim, and the Elohim repented him of the evil which he had pronounced against them? This might we procure great evil against our souls. And there was also a man that prophesied named Urijah. And there was also a man that prophesied in the name of the Elohim, Urijah, the son of Shimi of Kirith Jearim. You know, Kirith Jearim is going to be some tribes of Israel. You know, if you look at First Chronicles 2, First Chronicles chapter 2, 52, you'll see that them were some tribes of Israel. All right. And there was also a man that prophesied in the name of the Elohim, Urijah, the son of Shimi of Kirith Jearim, who prophesied against this city and against this land according to all the words of Jeremiah. And when Jehoiakim the king with all his mighty men and all the princes heard his words, the king sought to put him to death. But when Urijah heard it, he was afraid. Look, he was afraid and fled and went into Egypt. See, whenever we get afraid and scared, we'll run into Africa and hide. And that's what we did during the Babylonian wars that would cause our enslavement. The Creator know where we would be at. We couldn't hide from him. All right. And Jehoiakim the king sent men into Egypt, namely Elathan, the son of Achabar, and certain men with him into Egypt, and they fetched forth Urijah out of Egypt and brought him unto Jehoiakim the king, who slew him with the sword and cast his dead body into the graves of the common people. Now this prophet gonna believe in the Creator, so them Egyptians gonna sure enough snatch him up and turn him over, and then they probably did it with some monkeys. You know, the Egyptians used monkeys to apprehend you. Watch this here. The devils recorded this. The Egyptians used monkeys. You know, the Egyptians used the monkeys to arrest you. Let's see if this pop up. Man, they'll use the monkeys to, baboons and monkeys. They'll use baboons and monkeys to apprehend you. Let me see. Monkeys and baboons. Back in the days, you know, the Egyptians used monkeys and baboons. Man, that baboon would be used to apprehend you. You know that baboons. Man, they had baboons. Let me see. Egyptians baboon. We're gonna get the baboons. We're gonna show how the baboons will apprehend the folks, and that's probably what they used to apprehend that brother. Egyptian baboons. See, they was trained. You know, they was trained, and they'll hunt you down when they're trained. See that baboon right there? Look, that's probably how they got that prophet Urijah when he came in Africa. You know, he believed in the Creator, so they gonna do the worst thing. They gonna do the worst thing ever to him. You know what I'm saying? Did you know that baboons were trained in ancient Egypt to catch criminals? And that's probably how they got that prophet real ugly, like just put the baboons on him and then gave him to Jehoiakim, who would kill him. You know, and we know that them Egyptians didn't believe in the Creator. Okay. Now, so we know that prophet Urijah went into Africa, fleeing. We know the prophet Abraham, the prophet Joseph, the prophet Israel, the prophet Isaiah went there. And we know that Jeroboam, everybody was hanging out in Africa. All of us was hanging out in Africa. That's just where we Hebrews will hang out at. That's just where the Israelites will hang out in Africa. All right. Now, let's see the prophet Jeremiah caught up with us when the Babylonians came, because we couldn't stop doing the Egyptian religion, and that how we told the prophet Jeremiah that the Creator didn't tell us not to go into Egypt. You know, the prophet Jeremiah caught up with us. This our last act. The book of Jeremiah is going to be the last act for the 99% that ran into Africa to do the Egyptian religion, the Sahara religion, and how that we told the prophet Jeremiah that the Creator didn't say not to go into Africa when Ashkenazi sold up. And we never come back out of Africa. And that's what caused the transatlantic slave trade. All right. And it come to pass that when Jeremiah, this is Jeremiah 43, and it come to pass that when Jeremiah had made an end of speaking unto all the people, all the words of the Elohim their Yah, for which the Elohim their Yah had sent him to them, even all these words, then Azariah the son of Hosea, and Johan the son of Ker, and all the proud men, saying unto Jeremiah, Thou speakest falsely. The Elohim our Yah hath not sent thee to say, Go not into Egypt to sojourn there. But Barash the son of Ner setteth thee on edge against us for to deliver us into the hands of the Chaldeans, that they might put us to death and carry us away captive unto Babylon. See, we was gone into Africa. That's all the tribes right there. That's all the tribes right there. And that's going to be the same history as 2 Kings 25 verse 26 right here. And all the people, both small and great, and the captains of the armies arose and came to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldeans. So, you know, everybody went into Africa, and how we never returned from Africa because it was like a little percentage that was captured and taken to Babylon. And then when they come back, that'll be Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, and how they never recorded the Hebrews that went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion that's coming back home to be reunited with them. And that'll be us saying this right here. And even Prophet Jeremiah was in Africa while we were saying this here. Look. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burnt incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude. This is Jeremiah 44, verse 15, 16, 17, and 18. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, even all the people that dwelled in the land of Egypt, and Pathros answered Jeremiah, saying, so Jeremiah had to be in Egypt and Africa too, and Pathros is Memphis. He was in lower Egypt. Let me see. And answered Jeremiah, saying, as for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do so whatever thing go forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our princes, our kings in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of food and were well and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things and have been consumed by the sword and by famine. And we went into Africa to do their religion, and that was the last that you heard of us, the last that you heard of the tribes of Israel. Because then our enemies got our heritage, and that's basically what you have today, and how we abandon the whole covenant. Okay, Hebrews, I showed how it was no problem for us Israelites to go into Africa. No problem at all. And that's what caused our enslavement, and how that the Creator knew that we would be there, because we had been going there. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood.